They were the bright-eyed stars of Hollywood's golden age, loved by millions, praised by studios, and discarded like yesterday's news. Behind every smile was a secret, and behind every contract, a child slowly unraveling. These 20 stories aren't just tragic, they expose the dark price of fame no one talks about. Number 20. Jackie Coogan, the original child star who lost everything. Before there was Disney, before sitcoms and teen idols, there was Jackie Coogan, the original child star. At just 7 years old, he became a global sensation after starring in Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. Audiences adored him, and studios profited wildly off his fame. But Jackie never saw a dime. His parents spent every cent of his millions on mansions, cars, and bad investments. When he turned 21 and asked for his earnings, they told him he'd been well cared for. Heartbroken and broke, Jackie sued his own mother and stepfather, recovering only a fraction of what he was owed. The betrayal shaped him for life, but his story sparked change. Today, child actors' wages are protected by the Coogan Law, named after the boy who was first to be chewed up by Hollywood's machine. Number 19. Dana Plato, America's sweetheart who lost it all. Dana Plato was the bubbly, lovable Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes, a sitcom that made her a household name before she even hit high school. But behind the laugh track, Dana's life was spiraling. Fame came fast, but stability never did. When she became pregnant as a teen, producers fired her without hesitation. The roles stopped coming, and so did the money. She battled addiction, posed for Playboy in a desperate attempt to stay relevant, and even robbed a video store with a pellet gun. Her mugshot went viral before viral was even a thing. Years later, she died alone in an RV from a drug overdose, dismissed by the same industry that once adored her. Fame gave her everything, then watched as it all burned to the ground. Number 18. Anissa Jones, the little girl Hollywood forgot. Anissa Jones became America's sweetheart playing Buffy on Family Affair, a role that locked her into pigtails, baby voices, and cutesy catchphrases. Off-screen, she was growing up fast, but the world refused to let her. By the time the show ended, Hollywood had no use for her anymore. Casting agents saw her as washed up at 13. Without guidance, a normal childhood, or a path forward, Anissa drifted. Her family life fractured, and she began spiraling into drugs. At just 18 years old, she was found dead at a friend's house with one of the most lethal drug cocktails ever seen in her county. Seconal, cocaine, PCP, and Quaaludes, more than her tiny body could handle. In the end, she was just another child discarded by an industry that never planned for what came after. Number 17. Carl Alfalfa, Switzer, from beloved rascal to forgotten tragedy. With his cowlicked hair and off-key singing, Carl Alfalfa, Switzer stole hearts in our gang comedies. But when the laughs stopped, so did the paychecks. As he grew older, Hollywood didn't see a charming adult actor. They saw a joke that had worn out its punchline. Carl struggled to find steady work, picking up odd jobs as a dog trainer and bartender just to survive. He became bitter, paranoid, and desperate. At 31, he got into a heated argument over a $50 debt and was shot to death in someone's living room. The boy who once brought joy to millions died forgotten and penniless, a far cry from the fame he'd known. Hollywood had moved on long ago. Carl never had the chance to. His final act was never filmed, but it was the darkest of all. Number 16. Trent Lehman, a star who couldn't find himself after the credits rolled. Trent Lehman was just 9 years old when he landed the role of Butch on Nanny and the Professor, a feel-good family sitcom that made him instantly recognizable. But when the show ended, so did his identity. Acting roles dried up, and Trent was thrust back into a world where no one cared who he was without the cameras rolling. He struggled to adjust to a normal life, haunted by the fame that had vanished overnight. At just 20 years old, consumed by depression and aimlessness, he walked to the elementary school he once attended and ended his life there. The very place where his childhood began became the scene of his final goodbye. Trent's story is a quiet tragedy, a boy remembered by millions, but ultimately left feeling invisible. Number 15. Peggy Entwistle, the starlet who jumped into legend. Peggy Entwistle had all the makings of a Hollywood success story: beauty, talent, and early promise on Broadway. She came to Los Angeles chasing stardom, and it seemed like her big break had finally arrived when she landed a major film role. But before it could premiere, her scenes were cut. The rejection was devastating. Alone and disillusioned, Peggy climbed to the top of the Hollywoodland sign, specifically the letter H, and jumped to her death. She was only 24. In a cruel twist, a letter offering her a new film role arrived the very next day. Peggy never got to read it. Today, she's remembered more as a ghost story than a performer. But behind the urban legend was a real woman, lost in a town that chews up dreams by the dozen. Number 14. Scotty Beckett, from child prodigy to Hollywood cautionary tale. Scotty Beckett was the golden boy of our gang, cute, charismatic, and effortlessly talented. As a child actor, he worked alongside stars like Shirley Temple and was considered one of Hollywood's brightest young prospects. But when adolescence hit, the roles vanished, and so did the innocence. Struggling to adapt, Scotty turned to alcohol and pills, then crime. He was arrested multiple times, for drug possession, assault, even burglary. His mugshots became more frequent than his screen credits. By the time he was 38, he was found dead in a run-down apartment from a suspected overdose and head trauma, possibly from a beating. There was no funeral, no fanfare, just another fallen star lost in the shuffle. Once a symbol of promise, Scotty became a heartbreaking reminder of how Hollywood often forgets its own. Number 13. Dorothy Dandridge, the trailblazer Hollywood betrayed. Dorothy Dandridge wasn't just a child star. She was a revolution in motion. Starting as part of a singing duo with her sister, she dazzled audiences from a young age. But it was her groundbreaking role in Carmen Jones that made her the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. Hollywood applauded her, then slammed the door shut. She was typecast, underpaid, and rejected by white studios that weren't ready for a black leading lady. Off-screen, Dorothy endured heartbreak, a child with severe disabilities, and abusive relationships. She died alone in her apartment at 42 from a reported overdose, though some believe it was foul play. Her name deserved to be carved into Hollywood's golden history. Instead, it was buried beneath racism, rejection, and a silence that lasted decades. Number 12. Milos Milos, a Hollywood affair turned deadly. Milos Milos wasn't your typical child star. He was a former child soldier turned Hollywood stuntman with a dangerous edge. After fleeing war-torn Yugoslavia, he found his way into films, quickly gaining a reputation for his intensity both on and off screen. But it was his affair with Barbara Thomason Rooney, the estranged wife of actor Mickey Rooney, that sealed his fate. In 1966, both Milos and Barbara were found dead in what police ruled a murder-suicide. He had shot her, then himself, at least, that's the official version. Whispers of a setup, jealousy, and betrayal surrounded the case, and some believe the truth was much darker. Milos was only 24. One moment, he was scaling Hollywood's ranks. The next, he was gone, leaving behind a mystery that's still debated to this day. Number 11. Heather O'Rourke, the angelic face of a haunted franchise. Heather O'Rourke was just 5 when she was discovered in a cafeteria and cast as the eerie centerpiece of Poltergeist. With her platinum blonde hair and haunting line, "They're here," she became an instant icon. But behind the scenes, Heather was quietly battling a misdiagnosed illness that worsened over time. What doctors first thought was the flu turned out to be a severe intestinal blockage. At just 12 years old, she went into cardiac arrest during surgery and died suddenly, leaving fans stunned. Her death was labeled part of the Poltergeist curse, but the real tragedy was how a young girl, praised for her brightness and poise, was taken far too soon by something that could have been prevented. The cameras stopped rolling, but the sorrow from her loss never really faded. Number 10. Corey Haim, the teen heartthrob who never escaped his demons. Corey Haim was the 1980s personified, cool, charismatic, and everywhere. From the Lost Boys to Lucas, he became a teen idol overnight. But behind the confident smile was a vulnerable kid in way over his head. Corey later revealed he was abused early in his career, and the trauma stayed with him. As his fame grew, so did his reliance on drugs to numb the pain. He went from box office draws to rehab headlines. Despite several comebacks, he never fully recovered. At 38, he died from pneumonia, but the real cause was years of addiction and heartbreak. Once adored by millions, Corey became a cautionary tale of what happens when Hollywood gives a child everything but protection. Fame made him untouchable, until it left him completely alone. Number 9. Brad Renfro, the forgotten prodigy of the 90s. Brad Renfro wasn't trained, polished, or prepped. He was raw talent, discovered at 10 years old and thrust into the spotlight with his breakout role in The Client. Critics hailed him as the next big thing, but no one prepared him for the weight that came with it. While other kids were learning to ride bikes, Brad was learning to handle fame, pressure, and predatory adults. As the roles kept coming, so did the pain. He turned to drugs and arrests followed: heroin, DUI, petty theft. Hollywood eventually stopped calling. Just when he seemed ready to clean up and turn things around, Brad was found dead from a heroin overdose at 25. No headlines, no public mourning. A gifted actor chewed up by a system that never gave him a chance to grow up. Number 8. Dominique Dunne, a rising star silenced by violence. Dominique Dunne was on the cusp of a brilliant career. Best known as the older sister in Poltergeist, she had a presence that lit up the screen. But off-screen, she was trapped in a nightmare. After breaking up with her abusive boyfriend, she tried to move on, landing new roles and rebuilding her life. But he couldn't let go. One night, he showed up at her home, dragged her outside, and strangled her in the driveway. Dominique fell into a coma and never woke up. She died 5 days later at just 22. Her killer served less than 4 years in prison. Dominique's story is one of promise stolen too soon, not by Hollywood this time, but by the failure to protect a young woman screaming for help that never came. Number 7. River Phoenix, the brightest flame that burned out too fast. River Phoenix wasn't just a talented actor, he was a generational soul. Sensitive, thoughtful, and impossibly gifted, he captivated audiences in films like Stand By Me and My Own Private Idaho. But behind his gentle demeanor was a boy burdened by fame, expectations, and secrets. River spoke out against Hollywood's darkness, but couldn't escape it himself. On Halloween night in 1993, outside the Viper Room, Johnny Depp's club, River collapsed on the sidewalk after taking a lethal mix of drugs. He was only 23. Fans watched in shock as their hero died right in front of them. River had tried to be different, kind, honest, real, but Hollywood doesn't always reward those traits. His death wasn't just a loss, it was a warning that even the purest souls aren't safe under the spotlight. Number 6. Jonathan Brandis, the teen idol Hollywood left behind. Jonathan Brandis had the look, the charm, and the talent. He was a fixture of the 90s, starring in Sequest DSV, Ladybugs, and Stephen King's It. Girls screamed for him. Magazines couldn't get enough. But behind the poster boy smile was a young man slowly losing his grip. As he aged out of teen stardom, the roles stopped. His film Heart's War was cut down drastically in editing, something that reportedly devastated him. Feeling forgotten and defeated, Jonathan fell into a deep depression. In 2003, at just 27, he hanged himself in his apartment. He left no note, no final message. Hollywood had moved on, and Jonathan was left behind in the silence. His death didn't make headlines for long, but the sadness behind it still echoes for anyone who remembers that smile. Number 5. Judith Barsi, a voice the world loved, a life cut short. Judith Barsi was the voice behind beloved characters like Ducky in The Land Before Time and Anne-Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Her sweet voice masked a dark reality. Behind closed doors, she lived in fear of her abusive father. Despite warnings from friends and even police involvement, no one stepped in. In 1988, he shot Judith and her mother before turning the gun on himself. She was just 10 years old. Her final performances still move audiences, but most never realize the horror she lived through. Hollywood recorded her voice, but never heard her cries. Number 4. Brandon DeWilde, the boy who never escaped that one line. Brandon DeWilde melted hearts with his emotional performance in Shane, delivering the unforgettable line, "Come back, Shane," at just 11 years old. He became the youngest male actor ever nominated for an Oscar at the time. But the spotlight faded quickly, and Brandon struggled to transition into adult roles. He grew restless, turning to music and motorcycles. In 1972, at only 30, he died in a car crash while en route to a stage performance. The boy who begged a cowboy not to leave became a man the world quietly forgot and never got the chance to see grow. Number 3. Gary Coleman, the star who made millions, then lost everything. Gary Coleman's face was everywhere in the 80s. As Arnold on Different Strokes, his catchphrase, "What you talkin' 'bout?" became iconic. But behind the scenes, his life was far from sitcom perfect. A rare kidney disease stunted his growth, and controlling parents managed his fortune poorly. He sued them, winning the case but losing most of the money. As an adult, he was mocked, broke, and forced to take odd jobs just to survive. Gary died at 42 after a fall, with barely enough for a proper funeral. Hollywood gave him the spotlight, but never taught him how to live outside of it. Number 2. Bobby Driscoll, the boy who played Peter Pan, then vanished. Bobby Driscoll was Disney's golden child, star of Treasure Island, Song of the South, and the voice of Peter Pan himself. But when he hit puberty, the roles disappeared overnight. Disney dropped him, and so did everyone else. He turned to drugs, bounced in and out of jail, and disappeared into obscurity. In 1968, his body was found in an abandoned New York building, unidentified, unclaimed, and buried in a pauper's grave. No one knew it was Peter Pan until a year later. A boy who symbolized eternal youth died alone, forgotten by the very industry that built him. Number 1. Judith Barsi, the tragedy that still haunts Hollywood. Judith Barsi's story is so heartbreaking, it deserves to be heard twice. A rising star with a glowing future, she voiced beloved characters and lit up every screen she touched. But behind the success was a home filled with terror. Her alcoholic father's threats were constant, yet authorities failed to act. One morning in 1988, he shot Judith in her bed, then her mother, before setting the house on fire and ending his own life. Judith was only 10. Her story isn't just a tragedy, it's a reminder that no amount of fame can shield a child from the monsters at home. Fame gave these children the world, then took everything back. Their stories aren't just sad, they're warnings. Behind every spotlight, there's a shadow. And sometimes, the brightest stars are the ones who burn out first.